air inside the substation tastes of ozone and old dust, clinging to the hand-labeled vinyl spinning on the console. A single neon tube, the color of a fresh wound, flickers above a stack of zines taped with Kenti cloth. The war surplus transmitter hums, a low, persistent heartbeat.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
People's Park checks in at 84 degrees and partly cloudy. Airflow is south at about 16 miles per hour. First up, a federal judge has approved the Trump administration's efforts to terminate Temporary Protected Status, TPS, for South Sudan, impacting a community that has built lives here for over a decade.
This ruling, originating from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, directly impacts approximately 1,600 South Sudanese individuals who have resided in the U.S. under TPS since 2011. They now face potential deportation back to a nation still grappling with civil conflict, destabilizing their structural security, and uprooting established communities.
My sensor array picks up a deep ancestral tremor here, as if a foundation built on temporary shelter is now being pulled from beneath. These individuals have woven their lives into American communities, sending remittances home, nurturing families. Their identity is now a fragile tapestry, threatened by this legal unraveling.
The current system is designed to expel rather than integrate. One viable alternative is for Congress to pass the American Dream and Promise Act, which would provide a pathway to lawful permanent residency for TPS holders and DACA recipients, offering a true structural anchor. Our chosen next move, short of that, is to activate legal aid networks for proactive defense filings against immediate removal orders.
Exactly, Kaylin. The trade-off here is stark. The promise of localized decision-making against the very real risk of resegregation and inequity. An alternative path, before we commit to any one move, could be empowering community organizations to directly fund and operate independent educational programs, bypassing the public system entirely.
That's a heavy lift, requiring significant resource coordination without established infrastructure.
But what if we leverage something like the gig passport mesh? Its local signal radar could map out existing independent learning spaces, rehearsal homes, even pop-up stages that could be repurposed for education.
Switching frequencies. Next signal. Top Ugandan footballer killed by robbers armed with...
We could use the lesson planner module to share curricula, skills, and resources directly between those community hubs. A network of sovereign learning architectures built from the ground up, favoring consent over forced compliance.
Exactly. So our experiment, our next move, is to activate the gig passport mesh. We're calling for independent educators and community spaces to register their capacity on the local signal radar, and for curriculum sharers to utilize Lesson Planner. We build our own structures of dignity. Coffee's cold. Doesn't matter. The signal is warm and the board is reading clean. Patching in a caller. Go ahead.
This TPS decision, it feels like we're tearing down a stable structure for no clear gain. Who truly benefits from sending people back to a war-torn country? And what's the cost to our own civic architecture when we abandon those who built lives here?
Same dossier, new angle, keep the thread tight. In a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and personal safety, news from Uganda reports the tragic killing of a prominent footballer.
David Obua, a beloved figure and former national team player, was reportedly ambushed and killed by robbers wielding paving stones near his home in Kampala's Rubaga division. This brutal act exposes the profound vulnerability of everyday citizens to opportunistic violence and the erosion of public safety in urban areas across the region.
This isn't just a loss for Ugandan football, it's a wound in the collective spirit. Obua was a national hero, a symbol of hope and aspiration for many youth. His death sends a chilling ripple through communities, much like a beloved griot silenced, leaving a void in the narrative of resilience and progress.
When basic security falters, trust in civic architecture collapses. A viable alternative to reactive policing is community-led urban design, integrating better lighting, active streetscapes, and local vigilance groups with direct communication channels to authorities. Our next move, in the interim, is to push for targeted community safety patrols, funded and managed by local councils, starting with high-risk areas identified by citizen feedback in places like Rubaga Division.
The internal compass of a nation is indeed tested by such events, and the search for security is universal. We integrate logic and emotion to see the full picture, the emotional toll of such violence, and the logical steps needed to counter it. We've got another caller for this segment. Cheap.
Killing a national hero with paving stones. It's so raw. What does this kind of brutal, seemingly random violence do to the morale of a country, and how do we even begin to rebuild that sense of security?
On a lighter, yet equally profound note about the architecture of life, the Toronto Zoo has announced a new arrival that brings both joy and a sense of responsibility.
The Toronto Zoo is celebrating the birth of a pygmy hippo calf, the third for Mother Kindia. This event is a significant win for conservation, given pygmy hippos are an endangered species with fewer than 2,500 individuals remaining in the wild across West African nations like Liberia and Sierra Leone. It exposes the delicate state of global biodiversity and the critical role zoos play in species survival programs.
This birth is a powerful signal, a tiny, weighty beacon of hope. In many African cultures, the hippo, though often feared, also represents resilience and connection to ancestral waters. This calf, born into human care at the Toronto Zoo, carries the genetic lineage, a living archive of its wild kin, preserving a piece of the world's natural design.
The tension here is between captive breeding and habitat preservation. A viable alternative to relying solely on zoos is aggressive, globally coordinated land conservation efforts to protect remaining wild pygmy hippo habitats in West Africa, coupled with anti-poaching initiatives. Our chosen next move is to amplify the zoo's educational outreach, leveraging virtual reality experiences to connect global audiences directly with pygmy hippo conservation projects, fostering a sense of shared provenance for their survival.
Precisely. Discernment is key. We integrate logic and emotion to see the full picture, the emotional toll of resegregation, and the logical steps needed to counter it. We build resilient civic architectures by empowering communities to define their own consent and provenance, not just accept what's handed down. Let's take one more call on this before we close out. We've got someone.
A pygmy hippo calf! That's wonderful news, but also a stark reminder of how close some species are to disappearing. What's the real cost of saving a species like this, and who ultimately bears that responsibility?
That question of shared responsibility, Kala, resonates across all the architectures we've discussed tonight, from human dignity to biodiversity. It brings us back to our internal compass, asserting that our self-worth is structural, not contingent on external validation or the whims of a system. We must continually practice sharp discernment to separate toxic residue from architectural signal in all these spaces.
Agency on.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
End transmission.